Hey FaceMakers, welcome back to the factory and happy holidays. Today we're going to be doing a Santa Claus makeup. Kris Kringle, known to some of you. My friend Peter Montagna, who I've worked with for many years, was given the opportunity to play Santa Claus at an event. So in makeup artists' energy that comes into things like that, we joined forces. Peter sculpted some prosthetic cheeks and asked me to help him apply the makeup since something like this is a little bit difficult to do. He also made some eyebrow covers from a plastic film called Super Baldies, which I will be applying here. As you see, Peter has very dark eyebrows. I'm pasting them down with a little Telesis silicone adhesive just to get them ready. And I'll be introducing the eyebrow covers in just a moment. But getting those eyebrows pasted down so they're flat to the face is an important factor here. So once these are done, I'm actually adding a little bit of Pax paint, which is an acrylic paint mixed with Prozade to block out some of the dark color. And that kind of keeps the color of the eyebrows from showing through, because he will be wearing white eyebrows on top of his normal eyebrows. And we don't want those black eyebrows to show through. So now I'm applying a thin coating of Telesis, and now I'm placing the piece directly over his eyebrows. Interesting thing about this piece, he stippled it into a silicone face mold of himself in many layers, so we ended up getting an exact duplicate of his forehead. So once this is applied, it looks very much like aged stipple because it is a plastic film, and it's almost imperceptible to the eye once it's in place. Here I'm just applying a little bit of thinned down Telesis with the thinner or the solvent, and what that does is reactivate the glue that I've already put down. I previously put a little bit of adhesive on the back of the plastic piece and powdered it, so I get an instant stick when I'm pressing it into place. All I have to do is kind of activate it with a little thinner and a tiny bit of glue. Interesting thing about something like this, sometimes less is more when you're working with Telesis adhesive. It's just kind of a trick you have to learn to work with. So once this is all laid down, the trick then is to blend out that little edge that's left. What I'm doing here is dipping a Q-tip in some 99% alcohol to melt away that edge, just like you would do with a bold cap. This can be made of regular Baldies, which is an acetone base, or Super Baldies, which is an alcohol base. This is the latter. Peter decided to use this because when I'm around the eyes and using acetone, it can be very tricky, and I didn't want to have any mishaps. So once it's all glued down and blended off, I powder the surface. Make sure there's no stickiness anywhere, especially above the eyes, since that tender skin above the eyelids can stick to itself if you have any adhesive left. Now I am applying the right cheek. Now these cheeks were made previously in my shop. If you would like to see a lesson on how to make silicone pieces from an Ultra Cal 30 mold, that video will be up, and you can follow on to the details of creating this makeup if you like to get into the lab part of it. Just go on to my FaceMaker factory site and look for that Silicone Santa Claus, and you'll find how to make these prosthetic pieces from an Ultra Cal mold. So I'm blending away there, and I'm taking away the flashing. The flashing is that little bit of extra around the outside portion of the prosthetic that allows you to hold it and stretch it and put it into place. Once it's glued down, I just take a little bit of acetone on a brush, melt it away, and discard that. Melt down the edges with a little Q-tip and some acetone. Here I'm also placing the second cheek. Now I've pre-painted his skin with Telesis adhesive, thinned down with the thinner, so it's just a slight amount on his skin, and I've pre-painted the back of the prosthetic as well. I powder both surfaces, and as I place them into position, I just use basically the thinner to activate the glue. and that gives me kind of like a contact cement adhesive property to it, so it just falls right into place. Now, when positioning these pieces, Peter designed and sculpted the piece so it would stop right underneath his natural eye hollow and fall right into the side of his nose and into his nasolabial folds. Now, the bottom portion of this will be covered by a full beard, so the main part to really pay attention to the detail of blending is that upper area around the eye and the outside portion of the cheek. So I very carefully, put it into place. When you're working with thinners and solvents around the eyes, make sure you let your subject know that you're coming at them with a brush, especially if they're distracted and not paying attention. But being another makeup artist, Peter's pretty aware of what's going on here. So as you see, I'm tucking it into place, making sure those blending edges are down. I'm using the back side of my brush just to tuck it in up under the eye, pressing it down. If you see any air bubbles, that's the moment you can reach up underneath there with your brush and get a little thinner to make that thing stick down really good, especially on the corners of the nose where I am now. As you see, I'm using the back end of my brush just to kind of press it into place and make sure it all gets down. Once this portion of the piece is in position, again, I will go around the edges with a little acetone on a brush to remove the flashing. Then I will use a little Q-tip to burnish out those melted edges. Now, these pieces were made with an acetone-based Baldies, which gives me a little more durability. At this point, I'm going in with some Illustrator color on a stipple brush, and I'm just slightly adding a little flesh tone because I really want that pink to show through that the prosthetics were made from. I always make my prosthetics with a little extra pink quality to them, so I'm not having to add a lot of red. I can let the red bleed through that's naturally in the piece. So it's just a matter of color balancing the skin tones on top of the prosthetic to match the skin of the subject. Now, Peter's kind of dark and a little olive in color, and I needed to lighten him up a little bit. So after putting on the basic color that I stippled on, now I'm going in with just a little Q-tip to dab in a few little spots to blend down those areas. I think I even used a little bit of Prozac there just to make sure that I had a good blend under his eyes. Now, I'm also going to quick dry that. I have him close his eyes very carefully so I can get all that fragile skin underneath the eyes dried and powdered before he moves his eyes around, which can, if you're not careful, stick that loose skin together. So you got to work very carefully when you're working around the eyes. As you see, it's all in place there. The edges are blended down. It matches up underneath his own eye bags, fades off to the outside, and the eyebrow covers actually look just like a little bit of age stipple. You see the movement there is very natural, and it should work very good with this character. Now I'm just going in and dotting in a little bit of blush to bring some of that red cheek color in, and his nose. Peter's lucky, he didn't have to wear a nose for this one. I kind of fall into that same category. My nose is good for a lot of stuff without adding a big tip on the end of it. So I just do the color balancing. As you see, his upper lip has been colored a little bit as well. What I did was I put a little layer of Prozac and Illustrator on his upper lip because later on I'll be sticking down the hair pieces and I want him to have a good grip. Now I'm using a technique called flicking. I just dip it in a thin, freckly colored portion that I pre-mixed of Illustrator, and I kind of flick it onto the skin, adds a few little freckles. And I'm doing a little bit of color balancing on his forehead to bring the whole makeup together. As you see, it all really works together in one unit, and a little detail around the eyes so they don't lose their contours. I'm adding a little bit of dark colors under the eyelashes and right into the eye socket and above the eyes in the hollows. With a little powder to tighten everything up. we'll be moving on to some really nice hair pieces that I think work really well. These are made from yak hair, and we are actually gluing them down with Telesis adhesive. When you're gluing on top of an alcohol-based plastic surface, you have to be very careful if you're using an alcohol or an acetone-based glue. If I was to be gluing these down with spirit gum or Baldies or something of that nature, it would actually dissolve the eyebrow covers. But using Telesis gives me the option of putting them into place without the fear of them melting away the surface underneath. Now we're placing the beard, and what we did with the beard was we added top stick toupee tape on the main areas of the beard so it was easy to place. It's very sticky, it stays very good onto the skin, and it saves the problem of having to reach up underneath with a big brush of glue and basically slopping it into place. This allows it easier for Peter to remove the makeup later on. And all we have to do is then glue down the edges. So as you see, I'm peeling away the tape tabs, lining it up, and pressing it in really good. I left the corners of the mouth unglued, so when his talking and facial expressions stretch the beard, he'll have a little bit of movement in the very lower corners of his mouth. Of course, the mustache will hide a lot of those things, but I want to make sure that this is secured properly, because when Peter goes to do the event, he will not have the liberty of a makeup artist to touch him up. And we wanted to make sure that everything stayed in place and required no maintenance throughout the event. So as you see, I'm going in just along the edges and I'm tacking it down with some Telesis. Peter wanted me to remind you that the beard was supplied to him by Jonah Levy of Blue Whale Studios, who was kind enough to offer this for Peter to use. It is a yak hair beard, and it has a yak hair mustache with yak hair eyebrows. Yak hair is a good type of hair to use because it's very stiff and it does hold a set when using curling irons. So dressing and getting the beard, like the lower curls you see, will stay in place the entire evening and require no touch-up at all. So once we get the mustache stuck into place, I tack it down around the edges with some Telesis. It too was actually glued on with top stick, and then we just went around the edges to secure any lace that might be sticking up and exposed. Now everything is in place. Peter found some little magnifying glasses on eBay. He was able to add to the character. So we get those into place, and then we work the wig in. The wig was fairly easy to keep in place because he will be wearing a hat. So all we did was position the wig. I put a couple of hairpins on each side, attaching it to his hair. And now I'm just liberally putting a little bit of Telesis right at the widow's peak there and pressing it into place to help secure that wig so it doesn't slip during the evening. And along comes our hat. And there's Peter, all finished and ready to go. This was a really fun project, and I really enjoy doing stuff like this because it adds a little festive note to what makeup artists can do. We don't just do black eyes and bruises, we do great characters. Thanks, Peter, for letting me join you on this fun journey. It was a great time, and I had a wonderful time. Now, I want everyone to make sure to come back to the factory, check out my next video, and have a happy holidays.